I found a dead body in the back seat of my car. It was the middle of the night, and I didn't know how it got there. I still don't. It was around 2 a.m. when my boyfriend and I decided to stop for gas and use the restroom. We were driving home from a weekend away, a trip that had been filled with bad vibes and unsettling experiences from the moment we stepped into the rental car. But at this point, all I wanted to do was get home. So when we saw a rest area up ahead, I told Kyle, let's just stop there, get some gas, use the bathroom, and hit the road. Beef. There wasn't anyone else around when we arrived. I don't remember if the gas station was open or not. It was one of those old-fashioned kind that had the little stores attached to the pumps where you had to go inside to pay. Either way, we didn't go inside. Instead, we just sat in the car, turned off the engine, and got out. There were only 2 other cars parked around us, a beat-up pickup truck and a newer model sedan. As we walked past them toward the restrooms, I noticed something strange. The doors on both vehicles were wide open, hanging by their door handles. I mentioned it to Kyle, but he just shrugged it off. He said, maybe the owners went inside to use the restrooms too. Probably didn't want to leave their cars unlocked. Fair enough. I didn't think much of it as I pushed the door to the bathroom open and stepped inside. It was filthy. There was graffiti covering every inch of the walls. The floor was sticky and there was a stench that I can only describe as dirty socks and stale urine. But it was also completely empty. Both stalls were open, and the sink had no one at it. I washed my hands and walked back out to the parking lot, where Kyle was nowhere to be seen. I looked around for him a bit annoyed. Where the hell was he? I walked over to his side of the car, but then I noticed something that made me freeze in my tracks. There were tire tracks imprinted in the soft gravel surrounding our car. They were deep tracks, like something heavy had been dragged across the gravel. But Kyle had just been sitting in the car. He didn't get out. I knew that. I felt it in my gut. Something had been here. Something heavy. Brah. I called out for Kyle, my voice echoing in the stillness of the night. No answer. His phone went straight to voicemail. My heart started to pound. Was he playing some sick joke? Was this part of some twisted game he'd been planning? I tried calling again, but this time I didn't even bother to listen to the voicemail box. I just hung up and ran to the other side of the car, slid down onto the cold asphalt and started dialing 911. But before I could even tell the operator what had happened, a noise behind me made me freeze. It was coming from the pickup truck. At first I thought it was just the wind, but then the noise came again, dragging itself closer. I turned slowly, my eyes searching the darkness beyond the reach of the streetlights. That's when I saw it. Pair of glowing eyes. They were yellow, like the headlights of a car, except they weren't moving. They stayed fixed on me from their position in the darkness. Adrenaline surged through me, and I screamed as loud as I could, scrambling away from the truck. I fell to the ground and cut my palms on the rough concrete, scraped my knees. I didn't care. I pushed myself up and ran as fast as I could toward the safety of the highway. Behind me, I heard movement in the truck. Footsteps. Heavy footsteps. dragging themselves closer. I didn't dare look back. All I could think about was getting as far away from that place as possible. When I finally stopped running, my lungs burning and my legs heavy with exhaustion, the sky had begun to lighten with the first hints of dawn. Around me, the world was alive with the chirping of birds and the distant hum of traffic. It felt good to be out here, away from the Narration rest stop, away from the ice in the truck. But as the minutes passed, a new feeling began to creep over me, a sense of dread. Where was Kyle? Why hadn't he answered my calls? Had he really left me there, all alone? And what the hell was that thing in the truck? Was it human? Was it after me? With a trembling hand, I dialed Kyle's number again. This time he picked up. His voice sounded groggy and confused. I asked him where he was, and he told me he was in the car. What? I asked. What are you talking about? I can hear the truck behind me, I whispered, my heart sinking as I realized what he was saying. Pea's gone. I heard the dawning realization in his voice. It was the same dawning realization that I'd seen reflected in the eyes of that truck as it had watched me run away. We both knew that whatever had taken Kyle had now returned for me. And then I heard it, the sound of footsteps crunching on gravel, heavy footsteps. It was coming closer. I screamed, dropping the phone to the ground where it lay cracked and useless. Turning slowly, I looked back at the rest stop. The Narration tableau of the pickup truck, the sedan and the gas pumps taking shape in the growing light of dawn. Whatever had taken Kyle was back for me. It moved closer, its presence a suffocating weight that pressed down on me, stealing my breath. And as the entity emerged from the darkness, my blood turned to ice. I don't want to be too dramatic, so I'll just get right to the point. When I looked in the back seat of the car, the window was rolled down. Sitting there, slumped in the seat, was a man's body. He was pale, lifeless, and wearing the same clothes I'd seen Kyle wearing when he disappeared. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the expression on his face, frozen in a silent scream, eyes wide with terror, mouth open, as if begging for mercy. I stumbled back, tripping over my own feet, my mind reeling in horror. How did he get there? How long had he been dead? What had happened to him? More importantly, what had happened to Kyle? I needed answers. I needed to get out of there. As I stood there frozen in a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity, the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, casting long shadows across the parking lot. It was as if the morning light itself was hesitant to touch this macabre scene. The serenity of the rising sun did little to ease the turmoil in my chest. I remembered my phone lying on the ground, the screen shattered but still functional. With shaking hands, I picked it up, my fingers tracing the spiderweb of cracks. I dialed 911, my voice catching in my throat as I reported what I'd found. As the call connected, I could hear the hum of the operator on the other end, her voice a beacon of sanity in the chaos of my thought. In a shaky monotone, I described the scene, the body, the truck. When I finally hung up, a wave of nausea washed over me. I felt sick to my stomach, my entire being trembling with suppressed panic. What had once seemed like a mundane pit stop had transformed into a nightmare, but there was no turning back. Help was on the way, but I was trapped in this purgatory of fear until they arrived. The minutes ticked by, each one stretching into an eternity. The silence of the rest stop was deafening, amplifying the beating of my heart, making it a drum solo of terror in the orchestra of my fear. Then, in the distance, the wail of sirens pierced the morning calm. A life, hope, surged through me, chasing away some of the oppressive dread that had been coiling in my gut. As the first emergency vehicle came into view, its lights flashing, I felt a sob catch in my throat. But as the minutes stretched on and the sirens remained distant, my hope dwindled. Was I doomed to spend my life in fear, haunted by the specter of the rest stop forever? Or would salvation arrive in the nick of time? Only time would tell. Every time we looked in the rearview mirror, there was the same car. It had been following us for hours. But how? It wasn't supposed to be able to. It all started a few days before, when my boyfriend and I were driving home from visiting his parents. We had spent a wonderful weekend and were looking forward to a nice, relaxing drive home. But that was not what we got. The whole way home, we kept glancing at our rearview mirror, because we could have sworn that we were being followed by this beat-up old Chrysler 300. Now, normally, we wouldn't pay any mind to another driver on the highway. But something about this car just made us uneasy. For one, it was driving extremely slowly, like 55 miles per hour, on a 70-mile-per-hour highway. Also, it was weaving in and out of traffic and nearly caused multiple accidents. But the weirdest thing about it was that it kept getting closer and closer to us. At one point, we even saw the driver roll down his window, and he was making these weird hand gestures towards her. My boyfriend and I decided to change lanes and try to shake the guy off, but then we saw him make the same hand gesture while pointing at his own back seat. Then he proceeded to pull up right next to us and flash his high beams at us for a good 5 seconds. Needless to say, we were pretty scared at this point. So, we sped up and tried to put some distance between us and this creepy old man. But the scariest part was yet to come. After we got off the highway and onto the city streets, we thought we finally lost the guy. But as we turned towards our street, we saw the same car parked outside of our house. And if that wasn't creepy enough, we started hearing loud banging noises coming from inside the car. My boyfriend and I just stared at each other in disbelief. We didn't even bother knocking on our front door, but instead just jumped in the car and locked it. Then we sped away and went to stay at a hotel for the night. The next day, after we checked out of the hotel, we tried to go home again. As we approached our street, we saw the same car parked in front of our house. And once again, we heard those same loud banging noises coming from inside of it. At this point, we were absolutely terrified. So we decided to take the long way around and go to the grocery store. Little did we know that our nightmare was just beginning. As we pulled into the parking lot, we noticed that same old Chrysler 300 parked a few rows over from us. We tried to convince ourselves that it was just a coincidence. But deep down, we knew that there was no way that this was just some random occurrence. You see, Ever since we had gotten that mysterious text message from that unknown number last week, things had not been the same. My boyfriend and I had both been receiving these strange text messages from this number, but the texts themselves weren't really threatening or anything like that. They were more so just strange comments about our lives and things that were happening in our town. At first, we thought maybe it was a friend playing a prank on us, but we knew that none of our friends would be able to have obtained this information. All of the comments were actually quite accurate, and some of them were even a little unsettling. The strangest thing was that whenever we responded to the messages, the sender would respond back almost instantly, which was never the case before. At the time, we just brushed it off as some random creep and didn't think much of it. But now, seeing that same car in the parking lot, it dawned on us that this must be the guy who had been texting us. We quickly got out of our car and ran into the store. As we rounded the corner and approached the aisle where the checkout lane was, we saw him standing there waiting for us. He was tall and lanky, with greasy, unkempt hair and bloodshot eyes. His skin was pale and sickly looking, and he had this creepy smile plastered on his face. And if that wasn't bad enough, the smell hit me like a ton of bricks. Pee smelled like a rotting corpse. My boyfriend and I screamed and ran out of the store and back to our car. As we drove away, we saw him get into his car and speed out of the parking lot. We had shaken him off again, or so we thought. Hours later, after taking countless detours and driving on empty roads, we finally decided to pull off on a rest stop to stretch our legs and take a break. As soon as we stepped out of the car, we could feel the oppressive atmosphere settle around us. A thick fog had descended upon the area, and it was eerily silent. There was no wind or rustling leaves, just an oppressive quiet that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. As we began to walk along the desolate road, the silence was broken only by the crunching of gravel beneath our feet. The air grew colder by the second, and a shiver ran down my spine. My boyfriend and I quickened our pace, eager to escape the growing sense of dread that enveloped us. Suddenly, a dark shape emerged from the mist ahead of us. It was the same car. It had followed us here. My boyfriend and I turned and ran as fast as we could back to our car. But as we reached for the door handles, a loud bang echoed behind us. We froze and listened intently, our hearts pounding in our chests. Then we heard it again, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. We were being stalked. Adrenaline surged through our veins as we flung ourselves into the car and slammed the door shut. My boyfriend fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking so badly that he almost dropped them. Finally, the engine roared to life, and we screeched out of the rest stop, swerving dangerously as we went. We didn't stop until we had driven for hours and the gas light came on. That's when we decided to pull off at the next gas station and fill up. As we raced inside, we could feel the weight of his stare boring into our backs. We filled the car up and got out of there as fast as we could, but the relief was short-lived, because as we drove down the deserted road, we caught sight of the same car in the distance. It was getting closer. We drove faster. our eyes glued to the road ahead. We could feel his presence looming over us, his dark energy seeping into our car, chilling us to the bone. And then, as if from a nightmare, the old man emerged from the mist. He was standing right in the middle of the road, his eyes fixed on us. His smile was wide and grotesque, revealing teeth that were stained and yellow by. His breath formed white clouds in the frigid air, and the stench of decay wafted towards us. My boyfriend slammed on the brakes, and we skidded to a halt, inches away from the old man. He took a step back, still staring at us, and we could see the confusion clouding his eyes. In that moment, we saw not just a killer, but a lost soul trapped in an abyss of darkness. And then he was gone, vanished into the swirling mists as quickly as he had appeared. We sat there frozen, the silence deafening. And when we finally turned the car back on, we knew we were not alone. His presence lingered in the car with us, a malevolent shadow that refused to leave. We could feel his eyes burning into our backs, and we dared not look back. We keep checking the rearview mirror every few seconds, but we don't see anything behind us. I don't think he's following us anymore. Maybe we lost him. Okay, let's see. Let's check one more time. Yeah, there's nothing behind us. Thank God. Oh my God. I can't believe he actually followed us to the gas station. What was he planning on doing? Killing us? Was that why he was sending us those messages? Was it some kind of warning? I don't even want to think about it. And then we saw it. There in the rearview mirror was the same car, driving slowly but surely towards us. It was him. He was still there. How? How could he still be there? How is he still following us? Why won't he give up? Does he want us to crash? I gripped the seat as my boyfriend slammed on the brakes, skidding to a halt. Big car behind us screeched to a stop as well, and we could feel his eyes boring into us, which the windows of both cars were fogged up, obscuring our vision. But through the haze, we could see his silhouette, the twisted grin on his face, illuminated by the dim glow of the dashboard. He was so close we could see the bloodshot gleam in his eyes, the rotted flesh of his face. And then he vanished. The last thing I saw was his muddy shoes. They were caked in mud, like really caked in mud, like he had just ran through a mud puddle. And then I heard scream. Bye. Do you want to know if it was me screaming, or him screaming, or both? Because what happened next is not something I can explain. It was actually around 1 a.m., and we were driving home from a friend's house. So we have been drinking, but neither of us were drunk. We had, maybe 3 or 4 drinks each, and then we were heading home. We stopped at the corner store because my friend wanted to buy some cigarettes. So we pulled into the parking lot, and it was one of those nights where it is kind of hot outside. But there's also this really dense humidity. You know, that kind of heat that like sits on your skin and you feel like you're throw up. That's how I felt anyways. So we went into the corner store, and my friend got his cigarettes. And we were about to leave when we see this guy. He was standing by our car, and he is all sweaty, and he is like taking off his jacket, which was probably a good decision because it was still hot. But yeah, he's just standing there. He doesn't say anything to us. He doesn't acknowledge that we're there. he just opens the trunk of our car and starts putting stuff in there. It was just like clothes and like a pair of shoes. He didn't even ask us for a ride. He just started loading up the trunk. We just looked at each other and were like, okay, does anyone want to go in and get like a soda or something? 'Cause no one was saying anything and it was getting kind of weird. So I just decided to go in and get myself a Dr. Pepper. But while I was in there, my friend, he talked to the guy a little bit. Found out his name was Michael. I think he said he was 22 and he was just walking home because he had, just broken up with his girlfriend and she took their car. I don't know why he didn't just take the bus home. I mean, it would have made more sense. But either way, my friend comes out of the corner store and he's like, sure, hop in the car. We'll drive you home. And Michael was like, thanks. He gets in the back seat and he puts on this black hoodie. Like he pulls it tight so you couldn't see his face. Then we all got into the car and we started to drive away. I remember feeling really uncomfortable, like more uncomfortable than I should have been. But we weren't driving far. It was only like 5 minutes down the road, so we were almost there. And suddenly there's a big pothole, and the car just drops into it. Like we're all sitting there for a second, and I hear Michael scream, but then he's gone. Just like 1 second he was there, and the next he wasn't. I turn around to look at him, and he was in front of me. He was standing in front of me in the passenger seat looking at me, and I'm just sitting there thinking, oh my God. He opened the door, and he fell out. I turn around to look at my friend, and he is staring straight ahead with a big smile on his face. And I'm like, hey, dude, he fell out of the car. What do we do? And he says, who? And I'm like, Michael. And he's like, who's Michael? And that's when I realized he never got in the car. I immediately slam on the brakes and jump out of the car. I start running towards the light post, because that is where I saw him. Like I knew he had to be somewhere over there. There's just no way that he disappeared. Like he was standing in front of me. I could have sworn I saw him fall out of the car. As I'm running towards the light post, I can feel my heart beating in my chest, and I'm trying to calm myself down. I'm like, okay, you just turned into a frickin' vampire movie. That's all it was. Bye. What I didn't expect to see was his backpack. It was still in the back seat of the car, and it was soaking wet, like it wasn't raining. So I don't understand how it got wet. And it was also covered in mud, like really caked in mud, like he had just ran through a mud puddle. That's when I start to panic a little bit. I'm like, okay, I've seen enough horror movies to know that if I go anywhere near that backpack, something bad is going to happen. But then I feel like I have to check it out. Maybe he left something important in there. Maybe we can find somewhere to call from. I don't know. So I open the backseat door and I reach for the backpack, and as soon as my fingers touch it, I hear a scream. I don't know if it was me screaming or him screaming or both, because what happened next is not something I can explain. 1 minute I was reaching for the backpack, and the next I was on the ground and the backpack was gone. I tried to look for it, but I couldn't see anywhere. It was like it had vanished into thin air. But what scared me even more was the fact that I couldn't move. My arms and legs felt heavy and sluggish, and it was like there was this invisible force keeping me on the ground. I started to struggle against whatever was holding me down, but it was no use. It was like trying to fight against the ocean. I tried to scream for help, but no sound came out of my mouth. I was trapped. I was trapped, and I was terrified. Then I heard footsteps approaching. We were slow and heavy, like someone was walking right towards me. I don't know how long I lay there, but it felt like hours. Every second that passed was filled with dread and fear. I was completely helpless. Then the footsteps stopped right next to me. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for whatever was there to touch me, to hurt me, to do whatever it wanted. But nothing happened. After what felt like an eternity, I finally worked up the courage to open my eyes, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Standing next to me was the backpack. It was still wet and still covered in mud, but now it was floating. It was floating above the ground, suspended in midair. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I was frozen in fear. The backpack began to move. Pook. It floated higher and higher into the air until it was just out of my reach. Then it started to move away from me. I watched in horror as it drifted further and further away. I don't know how long I stood there watching it, but eventually it disappeared into the darkness. And then I could move again. I don't know why, but the second that backpack floated away, everything went back to normal. I could move my limbs. I could speak. I was back in reality. I stumbled to my feet and ran to my car. I don't remember what happened after that. I just remembered driving home and not stopping until I got there. I haven't thought about this for years. In fact, I was hoping I would never have to think about it again. But when I saw that backpack floating away, something inside of me snapped. I don't even know if I believe in ghosts, but if I had to guess, I would say that Michael is one of them.